I'm back with Alex MacDonald. We're in a new portion of the vineyard now that was planted in 1974, so we'll call these your middle-aged vines.
Fair enough.
But big difference here. So this is what you're trying to get to, essentially. How long is it going to take, and what's the difference when you get to this point?
Yeah, so this section was planted by our grandfather, as you mentioned, in 1974. And this is kind of the old school style of planting vineyards in California. It's called California Sprawl, and all these vines are head trained. One of the really importance of the head trained canopies, which you didn't see in the other section, is basically these shoots will want to follow the sun. There's a hormone in the tip that basically wants to grow up, 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 and then eventually as gravity takes over, they droop over and create that natural canopy. And if you look at the fruit set, which is all underneath right here, you notice that there's just the perfect amount of dappled sunlight coming through to give the fruit the exposure to ripen, but also protecting it to make sure that it can stay, in this 106-degree weather somewhat safe.
Right.
Good.
And lots of loose clusters, I see, which is something that you said you liked.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So it's kind of counterintuitive. If you see these really big clusters that are really tight with huge berries, they look really healthy, but the actual quality and the flavor is not very good. If you get these really tiny berries and loose clusters, it's much more concentrated, and also the nutrients from this vine can focus it to a smaller amount of berries, so you get that intensity, structure, ageability, and power, which is what we were always really looking for.
So again, drought year, but yet you've got a really verdant vine here, and it's thrown off what looks to me like a lot of fruit. Are you going to go through this at some point and trim that back, or is the vine in a state where it's doing it naturally?
Yeah, this vine looks super happy and healthy, and one of the aspects we do from our pruning practices is we go vine by vine and literally decide what that vine can handle from a year-to-year basis. There's no formulaic pruning process from each vine, but we might look at one that shows a little bit more vigor and we'll allow it to have a little bit more crop set that year. We might look at one that's a little bit less vigorous and prune it back to fewer buds. And the whole goal with that is to give the vine the workload that it can from an energy perspective. And then from a drought year and health perspective, you can notice that these vines are actually dry farmed. There is a drip irrigation line, but what we did was we added that a few years back so that we could water any replants that we do, any young vines, just to establish the root system. But there's no drip emitter near these old vines. And so what's beautiful about this is these root systems have actually basically created a way to go down 25 to 30 feet to tap into the natural water table. And by doing that, even on a extremely hot day like today, this vine has access to the water it needs without us having to do anything for it.
And now we're going to go over to your oldest vine section and see sort of the holy grail of what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Okay.